Hey everybody, Baldoric here. Today we're going to be talking about the new Grand Hero Battle unit, Iago. And specifically, we're going to be talking about him as of right now and him in the future. Meaning you can only get 3 copies of him right now. Meaning you can maximize him at +2 for the moment. But eventually you are going to be able to get more of him as he comes available in the Heroic Grail pool. So before we even go into anything, we have to talk about how this guy has one of the biggest walls of text for a tome in the game, and a very interesting ability at that. So, Iago's Tome. It grants res +3 at the start of odd number terms if any foe's HP is equal to or less than unit's HP -3, and that foe, and that foe is not adjacent to any other foe. Inflict attack and speed -4 and guard on that foe. And on even number turns, if there's any foe that's, HP less than equal to 3, and they are adjacent to another foe, it's a lot to read. Inflict defense res -4 and the panic condition on that foe. So basically, odd and even turns, your enemy has to either be playing like a little bit of a dancing game, either they're next to each other or they're not, or they're going to get these status effects, okay? Which makes him a really weird and tricky unit to play around. It's not very difficult to play around, but it is kind of annoying, which can make him a pretty good unit to kind of surprise on either defense or even a really strong unit to use on offense because the AI is not going to play around it. So, with that being said, I'm doing things a little bit differently. Usually I end on the budget build, but because right now you can only +2 him, I decided to just start with a budget build with him at +2 since that's the maximum he can be. So we're going to start budget and then move into my other builds, okay? So, the first build today is a budget build. Now, I know I have the +5 flowers. You don't have to have those. Even if you just had 1 flower in this guy, just for that extra HP. The big thing you want is the most amount of HP you can have. Reason being, you want to make sure that his tome goes off every turn as much as you can. Now, some of that is dependent on where the foes are and how they're positioned, whether they are or aren't next to each other. But having that HP stat as high as possible is going to make sure, as much as you can, that this ability does go off. Now, let's talk about the rest of this build, because we understand how the tome is going right now. So we have the speed defense link with smite. The reason I chose speed defense link is because you're going to be giving attack with the attack opening, which comes with this kit already. As soon as you 5-star him, you have that. So basically, if you smite somebody in and they are your highest attacker, they're going to have attack +6, speed +6, defense +6. So all you have to do is give them res +6 from somewhere and they are like fully buffed. You just need to make sure that there are other things going out, like Iago's tome effect, that are going to be nullifying foes' buffs with like panic, or making it so they can't get the specials off with guard. So he becomes a very good support unit on offense and defense, mostly offense for this kind of a build. But if you're going to be using him, like let's say he's an upcoming bonus unit for Aether Rage, you might want to look at something like this to build him for. Even if it's just one Dragon Flower for that extra HP, and then, whatever season, if you have 2 Mythics, he gets +10 HP, so we'll go up to 65. It's honestly pretty respectable. You're going to be hitting a lot of units with his HP effect, but you just have to make sure that you are playing according to his tome for the different effects. You got to look for the one you want. Probably that panic effect, but maybe the guard, depending on what's left and what you're worried about, like against an infantry pulse team or something like that, okay? So, this is the budget build, mostly for attack. You can use it for other modes, but let's talk about the next build. Now, this is my idea of an Aether Raid defense, specifically a Pulse Smoke team. Now, the Moonbow, if it is a full Pulse Smoke team and you have other people that are Pulse Smoking, you would want to change this out for something a little bit better. Probably like Iceberg, Glacius, something like that, because he does have 46 res with this build. By the way, I do have for my mythics, what is it? Sothis and Yune. So he is getting the resistance buff from Sothis, just so that everyone is aware, and the speed buff from Yune. But if you take a look, this is when he is able to be maxed out. And on defense, he's getting up to 68 HP, which is really nice by having both of the HP plus 5s. Sabotage attack is going to work pretty well with a res of 46, and depending on buffs. Res of 46 is still really respectable, and it's going to hit a lot of units and giving that negative attack stat, which is going to help your other units survive. You'd want this unit like in a corner somewhere so that they have to kind of play around getting to him to make sure that those buffs don't happen. Opponents are going to have to play around his tome ability to really do anything. So it could just be a minor annoyance, and depending on who else is on your team, you still want to have stuff like hardy bearings and things like that to make sure it works. AoEers perhaps. But basically he adds another layer that the opponent's going to have to play around for them to go in and attack you. So depending on how you build your defense team, he can really make things annoying for your opponent. And remember, you don't have to win every single defense game. You just want to maximize the amount of opponents you are killing to decrease the amount of lift you're losing. So having something like this being on your defense team really can help disrupt the enemy's flow. It might make it a little bit easier for your units to pick off some of theirs, maybe in ways that they weren't quite expecting because they were trying to play around the toe and it might mess them up. It's not going to work as well at higher levels, definitely going to work well in lower levels for people that aren't really paying attention to the tome ability or not fully understanding how it works. So I think depending on where you are, he's going to be a fantastic defense choice. But at least try it out. I think it's actually going to be worth playing around. Now, I also have an attack build with him, and I gave it summoner support for this build because it increases that HP even more. And when you're going on attack, you kind of want to have that. Now, I personally wouldn't use him for attack, but I definitely see him he's going to have some great usability. I actually gave him the wrong link here. I was going to give him the speed defense link again, but you could still use the attack and speed link depending on maybe your sweeper doesn't have the highest attack and somebody else does, so that can still work. It just kind of depends. The links honestly depend on whatever you have on your team anyways. For buffs, you just want to play around that. I gave him attack opening because he has that, and most likely your sweeper is going to have high attack. But for example, I use Matthew as one of my sweepers, so he doesn't necessarily get that bonus all the time because he doesn't have the highest attack. But it does depend on who else is on your team, who the bonus unit is, etc. Now, Iago is probably going to be a bonus unit at some point, so it is probably worth looking into building a support build similar to this one. You'll notice this is very similar to my budget build. That's honestly because I think this is a great way to build him for support. It's easy to build. His kit comes with most of the stuff required. All you need is like the HP plus 5, a link skill, which a lot of them are heroic grailable. From, I think it's Itsuki has one. A couple others have them too. Smite is really easy to come by. Moonbow's easy. This is all easy to come by stuff, right? You can get any of these skills very easily. The only thing that you'd have to do is get his summoner support up. And if you have an ally support with him, even better, right? He could potentially have like 62 attack, 40 speed, 32 defense, and 50 res if he's right next to that person. And if you have the attack and speed link going off with him as well, like if you reposition him in or something like that, he's going to have 66 attack. Well, actually 68 if he's 2 spaces away from that person. His speed is going to go up to 44, possibly 46. Both really respectable. Now, attack opening does not work on the unit that's using it, so you would want to make sure that somebody else is getting that attack opening. And if you don't want to use attack opening, swap it out. You could easily use drive attack here. You could just use hone attack. You could use joint hone speed or hone attack or whatever it is that you want. C-slot is totally dependent on who your sweeper and how your team works. So build it how you'd like. But that being said, I think that pretty much wraps up Iago. One of the more interesting units to come out recently. I hope we get to see more Grand Hero Battle units that are like this, that are more like specific utility. It kind of makes me think of Brunia, because when she came out, her tome is another one that's kind of interesting like this with its own built-in unique effect that has usability. It just depends on how you play them and what you're playing against. So, cool stuff. But I think that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked the video, consider subscribing. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos like this one. Whenever new units come out, I'll try to do some videos. Usually I only do it when single units come out, but we might do more videos in the future like that. If you like what you're seeing, consider also following my Twitter. I always post when I put these things out there. I'm posting about stuff I'm doing in game and stuff like that. If you have build ideas, throw them in the comments below. I know there are tons of different builds going on right now for this guy, so these are just a couple that I could come up with. Let me hear yours in the comments below, and maybe we can come up with some builds together. That being said, though, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you next time.